Chair, members of the committee. Debate over extending the Ontario Ombudsman's mandate over the broader public sector has been raging since 1975, the very first year of the creation of the office. It's been 38 years of unfinished business. Broader public section exclusion wasn't by design, but rather a character flaw in the Ombudsman Act. In 1979, a few years into the job, Ontario's first ombudsman appointed by Premier Bill Davis produced a blueprint on what worked, what didn't, and what should be fixed. Page 383 of this blueprint, Ombudsman Maloney said, quote, "It is my considered view that the Ombudsman's jurisdiction should similarly be extended to include such organizations as hospitals, universities, boards of education, nursing homes, and other such bodies financed in whole or in substantial part with public funds," unquote. And I'm sure if Ornge existed back then, he would have added that to the list as well. Successive ombudsmen right up to me have made the same point. There's been little political appetite to go there. Debate, however, is not abating. It is getting louder, more vigorous, and picking up steam. Since 2005, there have been no less than 14 private members' bill from all party members proposing some extension of our mandate into a part of MUSH. Since 2005, there have been 106 petitions tabled in Parliament to extend Ombudsman oversight into the broader public sector. Today, this committee is uniquely placed to start fixing a 38-year character flaw in the Ombudsman Act and in related jurisdiction by amending Bill 11 so that it is under Ombudsman oversight. You can start making it right today. The Ombudsman does not work for a public servant or a minister. You are my boss. I am the eyes and ears of the Assembly, and by extension the public, and the corridors of power. Now, what's wrong with Bill 11? Nothing and everything. It consists of an elaborate series of baby steps that will improve internal checks and balances. Not a bad thing, but falling short of true oversight. We are ahead by a few yards, but far from a touchdown. Some highlights include special investigators who can be appointed and report to the minister. The government may take over Ornge through supervisors if it really runs aground. And outside the bill, there is a patient advocate who reports to an Ornge vice president, collecting compliments and dealing with complaints. These all fall into the nice to have internal mechanisms category. They are the gravy on the meat, the cherry on the sundae. These mechanisms cannot be confused with true independent oversight. Everything proposed is tied to the bowels of Ornge, or the ministry, or the minister's office. The Ombudsman is the legislature's and the public's watchdog, not the ministry's pet. It is neither the gravy on the meat nor the cherry on the sundae, but a vital component of government accountability in Ontario. Bill 11 is more inner sight than oversight. If the government believes it requires inner sight, then of course we have no objection to that. But what Ornge really requires is oversight. The ability to complain to an independent body who has the tools to investigate and, if necessary, report back to the legislature publicly on an issue while making necessary recommendations. As Ontario's watchdog, we are the gold standard in keeping government maladministration at bay.
1 minute left.
In this bill, oversight is nowhere to be found. I certainly don't need to remind committee members of Ornge's colossal failure to administer public resources with integrity and the public interest. And today, I ask you to take the first step in fixing the MUSH character flaw in the legislation by making an amendment deeming a designated air ambulance provider as a government organization under the Ombudsman Act.
We'll go to questions. Third party, Michelle. Thank you, Nadine.
Merci.
I will start with a question on the letter that you wrote on March 1st, addressed to the Honorable Minister of Health, Christine Elliott, and myself. Do you remember your letter?
Yes.
Okay. My first question is, did you ever get an answer to your letter?
I received an answer this morning.
Oh, wow. Are you allowed to share with us what it says?
I believe you're copied on that answer.
Okay.
But it's an elaborate letter. You know, essentially there's 3 or 4 pages to the letter, laying out the mechanisms in Bill 11 and other internal mechanisms set out in the by Ornge, without taking a position one way or another on ombudsman oversight.
So the letter didn't finally convince you that they're going to grant your office oversight in Ornge?
Well, the letter is ambivalent, doesn't say no, doesn't say yes. Thanks to you for raising concerns and lays out what is in Bill 11 and what's done by Ornge. One of the concerns I have, of course, is the patient advocate office, which is set up as a kind of an office to placate ombudsman oversight. Right now in Ontario, there are 227 hospital sites. My understanding is that there could be upwards of 150 patient advocates. And these offices were set up in June 2010 as a result of a legislative amendment. Now, these offices, many of which have been in operation for 3 years, I am not aware of any public reporting by any of those offices, let alone public reporting critical of the organization. They are inherently part of that organization. They don't have the independence. And so when I'm told patient advocates are the answer, I'm not saying that they are useless, but they are not an answer to oversight. They may be good to collect compliments, look at complaints, provide internal advice that is useful, but it is not oversight.
Well, if we look at the 150 patient advocates that are within 150 hospital corporations in Ontario, do you still get complaints to your office about hospital, although they have patient advocates?
Yes, we do, and every year we update it in our annual report. I'm on the exact figure right now. Our deputy will look it up right now, but we have many complaints regarding hospitals, regarding actually the operations of patient advocates as being biased, unhelpful to deal with hardcore issues. There are instances where they may be relevant, but to deal with the hardcore issues that have brought the Ornge issue to the public front, my view is that in the view of our office, that patient advocates are not a useful tool. Last year, we received 383 complaints dealing with hospitals. We are the only jurisdiction in Canada where there's no ombudsman oversight of hospitals either.
How about Ornge? Have you received any calls, complaints about Ornge?
Over the years, we've received 29 complaints concerning Ornge, including 5 from whistleblowers. And we've been unable to deal with those complaints. In some instances, we've, when appropriate, referred them back to the ministry. We collaborate with the Auditor General as well. But we've been unable to get to the bottom of those complaints because of the lack of jurisdiction.
Would you be able to remember the length, the 29, can you give me an idea as to when you received them? In 2000, in 1995?
So maybe we'll look that up, but I think it's since 2005. So 2005, April 2005 to March 2006, 2. 2006, 2007, 1. April 2008 to March 2009, March 31st, 3. April 2011 to March 2012, 11. April 2012 to March 31st, 2013, 12. Now, dealing with whistleblowers, the beauty about the Ombudsman Act is that it's got built-in protection for whistleblowers. Number one, we can statutorily guarantee the confidentiality of complaints. Our records cannot be subpoenaed by the courts, for example. I'm immune from being compelled to testify and open up my files to the courts. It's protection like there is no other in our system. Secondly, supposing the identity of a whistleblower became known and reprisal action was taken, that would be viewed, in my opinion, as obstructing the ombudsman in an investigation, and that is an offense in our act, punishable by fine and imprisonment. So all this talk about protecting whistleblowers, and the beauty about the Ombudsman Act of 1975 is that it has the absolute protection punishable by jail. And we would investigate that and make charges and prosecute it ourselves. So if you really truly want to protect whistleblowers, speaking to MPPs or to anybody else for that matter, the solution is a very simple inclusion of Ornge in our mandate, and it's as easy as that.
Has the ministry ever given you a full answer as to why do they keep saying no? I mean, you have documented the number of private members billed, the number of petition, the number of complaints. I mean, the complaints against Ornge continue to come in, although they have their new patient advocate, although they have their new supervisor and all of this. You continue. Has the ministry ever articulated a good reason why not?
Not beyond all those that are before you right now. No, there's no doubt, in my opinion, as ombudsman, one of the issues that I see is that the office is independent. You can't control the office. I mean, the special investigators that can be appointed by the minister, what is the threshold test? What is the evidence that will be required before the minister makes a decision? And even then, when the appointment's made, the report is made to the minister. It's not public reporting. So all these measures, as I said, are more insight than oversight. They allow always the minister to be in a position of control. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing if you want to prevent the recurrence of a lot of things that we've seen in this file. But to call it the answer to oversight is questionable. The other thing that I find, my other further observation is that to us, we oversee over 500 different bodies. Quasi-judicial tribunals, agencies, boards, commissions, line ministries. We take 20,000 complaints a year. We operate a big machine. When I look at Ornge, 600 people, 150 million. Relative to the rest of our caseload, it would not be, I wouldn't think it would be a cause to request for additional funding of our office. We would just absorb it as part of our machine. And when I look at the amendments that are proposed, they are not inexpensive. They will cost money. So the value in our office is that it operates independently. It's not afraid to ask. It cannot be controlled politically. And I can't see it as being a cause to increase the resources of our office because of the size of the machinery we currently operate.
I want to come back to, you shared with us that of the 29 complaints you've received, 6 were from whistleblowers.
Yes.
Five. I take it that you followed Ornge. You saw that money was taken from the public side to the for-profit, that Mr. Maz's compensation was in the $1.4 million range. Without sharing with me things you're not allowed to share, are those the sort of complaint that the whistleblowers were bringing forward?
Yes.
So exactly what the scandal ended up being?
Well, you know, we, as the acting auditor general said,
1 minute left.
There's a big difference between the work he does and the work we do. He is in charge of financial oversight, where the numbers go, value for money, that kind of thing. So he's not set up to take complaints. We are set up to take complaints. That's our business. Complaints about the maladministration. We don't review financial records. We review administrative decisions that are made with public funds. So administrative decisions, whether it's buying helicopters or not allowing complaints to go forward, censuring whistleblowers, those are all the kinds of things that clearly would fall within our mandate.
And say I would agree with you that you are the ultimate whistleblower protection. If somebody goes to you, they can feel safe, they don't need to hire a lawyer, and they're not going to lose their job. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the government side. Ms. Jessup.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moran, and especially for your overview of the history in terms of the original Ombudsman Act, I think you said 1975. Since that time, we've had conservative governments, we've had one NDP government, and of course now the Liberal government. None of those has picked up on the suggestion to expand the powers of the Ombudsman to the mush sectors. Is that correct?
That's correct.
During that time, no doubt, do you have any data related to complaints about the original air ambulance system in Ontario prior to 2005?
No, we don't.
You don't. So you started collecting this?
The practice of our office has been historically not to track complaints that were outside our jurisdiction. When we decided in 2005 to track them whenever feasible, so that we would have answers to questions by the public and from MPPs when the matter arose, but we did not keep statistics prior to 2005.
When you first received complaints in 2005, how did you deal with them? The ones specifically related to this, well, Ornge, I guess, was established in 2005. How did you deal with those?
Well, depending on the nature of complaints, what we do when we have non-jurisdictional complaints is that we try to help complainants find their way to bodies that can investigate. So what we did with those cases is counsel them, provide them information as to where the complaints may be able to go, whether it's the ministry or to do some follow-up with the Auditor General's office. But basically, that's all we can do.
And specifically these 29, did you refer them to the Ministry of Health and Human Health? I hope this isn't eating my time.
Some of them would have been referred to the ministry, not all of them, but some would have been, people would have been referred to the ministry. Some people complained to us that they had been to the ministry and they didn't get a response to their complaint, or the response wasn't responsive to the issues that they had raised.
How, if you had oversight, as you were asking for an amendment clearly to Bill 11, what would you do in the case of what is, after all, a very tiny number of complaints, 29 out of, I don't know when the time stands since 2005, you said 20,000 perhaps? Is that over that same time span that you received 29 related to Ornge, you received 20,000?
No, we did, last year we received 20,000 complaints.
So it's safe to say that since 2005, you may have received up to 100,000 complaints, and this would be 29 of those.
Yes, our volume of cases increased 27% last year and another 20-something% the year before. But I see your point. There have been tens of thousands of complaints and only not 29 dealing with Ornge. Often the result of low complaints in an area is a result, in this kind of case, two factors in play. One is people know we don't oversee Ornge, so they don't bother to complain. Or B, that there's a lack of confidence that anything will happen even if they complain. So I take your point, but it also has to be measured with those two factors.
Well, in my opinion, people don't know what areas the Ombudsman has control over. I would be astonished if they did. But anyway, we'll leave that. What would you have done differently? Supposing you had investigated complaint number 1. You've heard about the stonewalling that the Auditor General received. What would have been different in your case if you had been the one to respond?
Well, it's an offense to stonewall. Lack of cooperation is an offense under the Ombudsman Act, punishable by fine or imprisonment, which is why we always receive stellar cooperation by the provincial government.
If you receive the stonewalling, and obviously this is an offense, Do you immediately report that to the ministry responsible for that agency?
Yes, we go up the chain of command, and when we feel when there's pushback or resistance or lack of cooperation, we simply make some calls, and as soon as the matter goes up the chain, then it hits somebody who's familiar with our act and the obligations under our act, and cooperation ensues. Cooperation is never an issue overseeing provincial government, ever.
So you would, I know hindsight is 20/20, but what you, I guess, are trying to tell us is that if you'd been stonewalled, you would have gone through, as you say, the chain of command, that there was the opportunity or the potential that individuals within the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care would have been far quicker to...
Absolutely. I have absolutely no doubt. If you look at the experience of our office, the OLG, we did an investigation called Game of Trust in 2007, where the OLG was reticent to accept our recommendations. The minister intervened very quickly and corrected the matter. Whereas the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, another example, where we imposed a 2-year freeze to fix the issues raised in our report. So I have no doubt in my mind that the government would have been very responsive. Now, I'm not saying that we would have prevented anything, and I can't predict that we would have been the answer to all issues, but on that specific issue, there's no doubt in my mind that the government would have responded very quickly, because we act as a radar, telling the minister, listen, there's a problem with this agency, it's gone off tracks.
So your experience has been that our government has been very responsive to you
Yes.
as soon as they are apprised of that.
Absolutely.
Now, you said that because of the small number of complaints, that this could easily be absorbed by your office, given this body. But I think you're saying to us that your ambition would be to have this extended to the entire health sector. I mean, it is in the amended Ambulance Act, which is modeled on the Public Hospitals Act. Would you not logically, and you refer to the number of complaints you get from hospitals, supposing you were to extend your mandate to public hospitals, surely then that would have a major impact in terms of the need for staff and size of your office and funding and so on.
Yes, your point is very good. It's very relevant that the logic that applies to Ornge applies to hospitals, no doubt about it. If the Ombudsman's office were to oversee hospitals in Ontario, it would be a measure that would require additional resources. Quebec's Ombudsman gave that jurisdiction a couple of years ago, and she added 40 staff members to her staff. But there was a negotiation with the Ministry of Health in Quebec, and they transferred employees from the ministry to the Ombudsman's office and made it a cost-neutral exercise.
Would you keep the patient advocate system within the hospitals to deal with minor complaints, with compliments?
Absolutely. I think the patient advocate system is part of the inner workings to respond to complaints. The Ombudsman is always an office of last resort. And if the hospitals are prepared to set up patient advocates, I think that that's a positive step. Anything that resolve public complaints is a positive step.
And you have no objection to what is currently within Bill 11. Your position is it needs an addition.
Correct. There's nothing offensive in Bill 11. There's nothing wrong that I can see. My only point is that it's not an answer to the oversight challenges that Ornge has faced in the past.
Thank you.
Got a minute left.
Thank you. I guess I'm just looking at this from a slightly different perspective. So if in fact you had oversight, you might have been able to pick up on a couple of those complaints earlier. I guess the supposition that you might have been able to avoid some of what we're now dealing with.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the opposition. Mr. Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Moran, for being here. I want to express our appreciation to you and your staff for the work that you do. You've certainly been very cooperative and responsive every time we've contacted your office. I just want to say at the outset that we will certainly be bringing forward an amendment to this bill to in fact give you the oversight. this organization. I've certainly seen enough after some 60 witnesses now, the trail that we have at Ornge to know that the oversight and, quite frankly, the authority of the province is necessary. I think the line of questioning that Ms. Jancic took with you certainly supports the fact that there should be no reason why you would not be given that oversight. To absorb 29, if that is an indication of what would happen on a go-forward basis, 29 complaints to be absorbed into your organization would certainly not be a financial burden. In fact, I think we would probably have saved multi-millions of dollars had you had the oversight. I'd like to ask you, are you familiar with the Ministry of Health's initiative to establish the Air Ambulance Oversight Program, which, according to the Minister, is their response to an oversight mechanism within the Ministry of Health?
It was mentioned in a letter I received this morning from the Minister, but beyond that, no.
The Ministry took the initiative to create this new program. They hired an individual to oversee this specific program, and who in turn hired 6 additional staff. We, through questioning here last week of that new director of that program, asked what experience he has in either air or land ambulance. He responded none. He also confirmed that none of the 6 new staff that he hired to help him with his oversight responsibilities in this program, that none of those staff have any experience in either air or land ambulance. When I say some of us at this table feel that it's very difficult for someone to exercise oversight if they have no knowledge of the context of that very specialized function. I'd like your opinion as to whether or not it is important for someone who has oversight responsibility that they would at least have some knowledge of the functions that they are overseeing.
No, I think that in regards to our office, we oversee over 500 different bodies, and I don't consider myself an expert in 500 different bodies. We are experts at investigation and getting to the bottom of things. We go where the expertise is. So when we conduct an investigation on newborn screening, for example, what do I know about newborn screening? I'm not an expert in the field. We have to go out, look at other jurisdictions, ramp up our knowledge, and then we apply common sense and reason and articulate it in a report. Same thing with Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, where you're talking about complex algorithms to calculate values of homes, or the OLG, based on the statistical odds of winning lotteries. So these are all specialty areas where I knew very little at the beginning, but I'm supported by an office of 87 people. We go out and get our evidence. We apply it just like a jury would in a case. So to come back to your question, I don't think it's necessary that the overseer have that particular expertise in the area. The overseer has to have the proper investigative skills and resources to get out there to get the evidence. So if you're telling me there's only 6 people and they're working within an organization, my concern would be that they don't have the independence and resources to go to the information. And that would be my greater concern.
So if you were to, let's take the MPAC example. If you were to do your investigation of MPAC and found that the individuals who had the responsibility to do the assessments knew nothing about the real estate market, had no concept of estimates, had no previous background or experience in terms of the various assessment methodologies, as the Ombudsman, I would expect that you may well point to that as one of the reasons that there's a problem with the impact system.
Precisely. You know, I think the word oversight can be misused, so I'm not sure if the people you refer to are people who are actually within the organization. But to be oversight is outside the organization. It's no connection to the organization. So if you're within the organization providing oversight, there's a period where that oversight can really be an exercise of managerial supervision rather than oversight. And of course, you would need people within the organization to have those skill sets and knowledge. And we did find an impact that there were big issues with the quality of the assessments. That 40% of them were actually inaccurate because of the lack of professionalism of that organization at that time.
Thank you for that, and that's precisely the point I'm getting here. Because these people in the ambulance oversight program have the responsibility to analyze the reports that are sent into the ministry by Ornge. Without knowing anything about the air ambulance business or industry, how can they possibly determine whether or not the information that Ornge is submitting to them is credible? They don't even know what questions to ask if in fact there seems to be an issue. And that's why I think it's important that you have oversight responsibility, because, sir, you will be the only person who will be able to tell us and get to the bottom of the lack of credibility that many of the functions within the Ministry of Health have. I would expect that one of the things that you would want to ensure is that information that's flowing from Ornge is in fact credible, that we can rely on it, so that then the Ministry of Health can take action on that. We don't have that today. There are very complex reports that are coming to the Ministry of Health every day. And we have people who have no idea whether or not those reports are credible. So I just, could you give us an estimate? Because I know this is always the pushback. You know, government and ministers don't want to make you any more powerful. They see you as a threat. With regard to air ambulance, with regard to Ornge, what would the additional cost be to the government to give you that extended oversight over this organization?
I don't see that there would be any additional cost with regards to oversight. I cannot imagine that dealing with 20,000 cases, adding 29 to the pot would require additional funding. I cannot see it at all. Plus, I would expect Ornge to be squeaky clean going forward, right?
Well, all the more reason why I'd like you to be there.
Yes.
I find it interesting in that regard that the number of complaints to you about Ornge have actually significantly increased within the last 18 months. Can you share with us what the nature of those complaints are?
We have 1 minute left.
The 11 complaints in the last year, 3 of the 11 complaints received are whistleblowers. Here are some areas. Negative media reports about Ornge are accurate. In cases of non-emergency transfer, Ornge does not use its nurses or EMS staff to screen for infection control. It instead has non-medical staff undergo 3-week infection control training, which in complainant's view is not sufficient. Ornge misappropriating government funds, providing substandard services by lowering qualifications for paramedics, creating a monopoly over medical air transport, improperly relocating the heliport location, and lack of ministry oversight.
These are all within the last 18 months.
Yes.
Chair, I'd like to ask if the Ombudsman is willing, if you wouldn't mind providing us with a written report on that. I understand that you have privacy issues. We're not looking for any identification information, but it would be very helpful if you could provide the committee with that information so that we know what the issues are that are still very current at Ornge.
Yes, I'll speak to counsel within our office and see whether we can provide you with that information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Moran. Thank you,